On today's episode of Cubs 360, we're going to look over all the offseason moves regarding the signings and players we let go. We're also going to look over all the stuff that happened for the Cubs during spring training. We're also going to look at some Cubs highlights from the World Baseball Classic and the recent extensions of Pete Crow Armstrong and Nico Hoerner. That will be happening on this episode of Cubs 360. What's up, Cubs fans? It's Jack from Cubs 360. Thank you very much for tuning in to episode 60 of the Cubs 360 podcast. If you're interested in the content, feel free to like, subscribe, and also follow us on Twitter at Cubs360X. So this was initially going to be two separate videos, but with all the content that is coming up, it's better that we do it in one, but it shouldn't be anything long, but let's get right to it. So we're going to look at all the offseason moves that happened. The Cubs made only one trade, and we'll get right to that, and that was the trade for Edward Cabrera, where we sent two prospects and the highlighter Owen Casey to the Miami Marlins in exchange for Edward Cabrera, which was, in my opinion, a great trade. The Cubs needed another pitcher to go into the rotation, and especially in the top of the rotation, even though by the looks of it, Cabrera is like the fourth starter, which isn't the end of the world, but regardless, it is a pitcher that we needed, and it was a cost-effective one. His contract cap hit is at like 4.45 or something like that. And last time I checked, but regardless, very cheap. And that's what the Cubs were going for because, you know, they missed out on guys like Dylan Cease. They missed out on like Zach Gallen or whoever else you want to name as like the highlighted top pitching free agents. But he brings a lot of stuff that like Dylan Cease has, I would say, like the strikeouts, the velocity, and the stuff. Like I said, just great trade from the Cubs. I know Owen Casey was, you know, a lot to give up, but we learned that you have to give to get, especially last year's trade deadline. So, again, great trade. Owen Casey also wasn't really going to get a spot on the team, especially since Ballesteros got the call-up for opening day. So, that was pretty much the last spot there. Casey has a lot of power hitting potential, and you saw it early in Marlins games. But, again, you have Suzuki that can play right field, and then you have Ballesteros at DH. The fit just made too much sense for the Cubs to have Ballesteros there. His bat was a lot more consistent. Casey strikes out a lot more. So that was something that really hurt the Cubs, I would say, in the division series against Milwaukee last season, that 70% of their runs or something close to that came from the home run, whereas the Brewers were able to get contact hitting and runs in scoring position. Capitalizing on that, that was a real difference maker between the Brewers and the Cubs in that series, and that's the reason why the Brewers made it to the NLCS and we didn't. So, again, I like the move a lot just for what we gave up. I think Casey, like I said, great player, but in terms of situational hitting, Ballesteros was the guy that we needed, and we were able to capitalize on Casey's value. So, Edward Cabrera, great fit for the Cubs. So we'll see how that pans out this season. So we're going to go to all the free agents that went and signed here. We're going to start with the guys that left. Obviously, the one that highlights that is Kyle Tucker, and he was on a qualifying offer, so we will get a draft pick for that. He signed a 4-year deal worth $240 million with deferral. So I forgot what the cap hit now is, but $60 million AAV initially before deferrals. Insane to me. Kyle Tucker is not worth that kind of money, even like if he had a great season like he did. But there were Cubs fans, myself included, that were tired of him like in August. So I don't see what the Dodgers saw in this. I know they needed a corner outfielder, and they still could have gotten Tucker, but I don't know if this was the deal to get him because his suitors were down to like the Mets, who had some prospects and they had them coming up there. They also have the Blue Jays. I mean, I think the Blue Jays were the other team that made a lot of sense there. But the Dodgers needed the corner outfielder. They got Tucker, but the contract, in my opinion, is just absolutely ridiculous. We're going to go to the second guy here, and it's Brad Keller, who signed a 2-year deal worth $22 million with the Philadelphia Phillies. That was a big hit on our bullpen because Brad Keller, I would say, was the most consistent guy in the bullpen in 2025 for the Cubs. But again, I just think knowing the philosophies of Jed Hoyer in the front office, they're not willing to dish out $11 million to a reliever. So he kind of priced himself out of Chicago, and he got a nice deal on a team that is trying to win a World Series in their window before Zach Wheeler retires next season. So they really want to capitalize on that, and Brad Keller was a good get for them. Willie Castro. I honestly forgot he was on the team after Chicago got him at the deadline from Minnesota, but he signed a 2-year deal worth $12.8 million and AAV of $6.4 million with the Colorado Rockies, so he's going to be starting for them. So good opportunity there for him, get some value, and then maybe get traded at the deadline if he has a lot of value and he can get traded to a contending team, whether that is being a starter or just on the bench getting reps like the Cubs. But again, he wasn't good for Chicago, so he kind of had no choice but to go to a team where he could try to build back up his value, and I think Colorado, for him, is a good fit there. Secondly, another trade deadline acquisition, Michael Soroka. A bit disappointing with the Cubs. Got injured in his first game with us. He goes to the Arizona Diamondbacks on a 1-year deal worth $7.5 million. And he was trying to... Initially, he was a starter for Washington, did not have a good season. He went to Chicago to be a long or middle relief pitcher, regardless. So he's starting games for the Diamondbacks, and he wants to be a starter. So the Diamondbacks have had a lot of issues with their starting rotation, just guys not being healthy, just nothing consistent. So Soroka, that's a good fit for him, and he wants to be a starter, and why not on a team that's had issues? And it's at this point, it's no risk, because if he sucks, then you're used to it. But if he's good, then he's good, and then he could get a starting job somewhere else, or maybe Arizona re-signs him to a bigger deal. Aaron Savali, who was a waiver pickup from the White Sox, he goes to the A's to be a starter on a $6 million contract for 1 year. The A's needed pitching. Savali, I would say, I thought he was pretty consistent for us in the 2 months he was with us, but again, the A's needed pitching to go with Severino and then whoever else they have there. So just bolstering whatever kind of pitching they have going on to go with their star-studded lineup. So I like this for the A's a lot. And Savali, again, $6 million, didn't really need him that much. And then another guy that kind of had a hit on our bullpen, Drew Pomeranz, who went to the Angels on a 1-year deal worth $4 million. Again, just a good contract for him, but he did start to dip in his production at the end of the season. The first half, he was absolutely phenomenal. I think he started off with a completely blank ERA, and then he kind of started to fall off at the end of the season. So he goes to the Angels that, again, are just a mess, but it's a 1-year deal, and if he does good, he gets traded to a contending team at the deadline, and again, that's a valuable asset. Carlos Santana also going to the Diamondbacks. Again, he really didn't do much for us. He was also the other waiver pickup from the Guardians. He signs a 2-year deal, and the Diamondbacks didn't need a first baseman after Josh Naylor got traded. They didn't really have anybody to replace him at the deadline. I don't know if Santana was the guy that I would have went for if I was Mike Hazen in Arizona, but again, he's still playing. Good for him, but I don't know if that's what I would have went for if I was Arizona, but again, not the end of the world. Good pickup for the Diamondbacks, I guess. Secondly, we're going to go to Taylor Rogers, who is another trade deadline acquisition. Minnesota Twins is where he goes on a 1-year deal worth $2 million. I would say Taylor Rogers was fine for the Cubs. I didn't really have too many complaints about him. But again, I think they just really wanted to go back with what they had with the bullpen and just get some new guys that would be able to effectively upgrade it. And I think they were able to do better than Taylor Rogers, who we got from the Pirates after he got flipped from Cincinnati. That was a whole big thing, but we did get him. So, again, that's Castro, that's Soroka, and there's Taylor Rogers that were all trade deadline acquisitions now gone from the Chicago Cubs. And then finally, there's 2 guys that signed smaller deals, like Zach Pop and Keegan Thompson going to the Phillies and Reds respectively. But I'm going to go with Nate Pearson, who I forgot was on the lineup, or on the roster, until he got traded to the Houston Astros, and he signed a $1.35 million deal with Houston. and apparently they were going to use him as a starter or something like that. I don't know what goes on in Houston, but if he's starting, good luck, I guess. But again, he was in the minors for a good amount of time. He didn't really have a great Cubs career. So, yeah, that's what I would have to say there. The last trade deadline acquisition, he technically did get traded by Andrew Kittredge. He had like a dead cap hit if his option wasn't picked up by the Cubs. So instead, they just traded him to a team that was willing to pick that up, in which that case was the Baltimore Orioles, the team that we acquired Kittredge from. So he goes back there and he signs his offer, which was like $9 million, something I would not be giving Andrew Kittredge. But for the most part, he was good. But again, just there were ups and downs with Kittredge as well. Now we're going to go to the guys that went to the Cubs. Highlighting that especially is Alex Bregman. 5 years, $175 million. And then there's deferrals, which are rare in cases with Chicago Cubs, and I'm surprised they were able to lock down a Boris client with that kind of deal with deferrals. So a bit of a new experience for the Cubs with free agent negotiations. I feel like this is like the first time I've seen Jed Hoyer do something like this, and that's why they wanted to go for a cost-effective pitcher like Edward Cabrera, and that's why they got him, because they wanted to get a big bat worth a lot of money on the market and get a cheap but effective starting pitcher, and they did that. So, again, Bregman plays third base. So Matt Shaw goes to the bench, and they had Seiya Suzuki to play right field, so that's why Tucker went. But they needed somebody to replace the production of Tucker, and Bregman does just that, and he actually has good defense at third base. Not that Shaw didn't, but you're getting both sides of the ball effectively played at third base. So that's good there, and he provides a lot of veteran leadership, which is something the Cubs could also use. Not that they don't have it, but just a bit of more experience there, especially since he is a two-time World Series champion with the Astros, the same Astros team that Kyle Tucker came from. So I like the fit a lot for Bregman, and there's a reason why the Cubs were going after him the season prior before he went to Boston. Shota Imanaga, there were a bit of weird things going on with his contract, like options that were going on, like a club option, then a player option that got declined. But he goes back on a qualifying offer because he was going to be a free agent, but instead he picks up the qualifying offer, just a little over $22 million. Shota Imanaga was not good at the end of the season, and I think every Cubs fan can tell you that. Whether he was tipping pitches, he finally got solved after coming from Japan, but regardless, not a good ending to the season for Shota Imanaga in September, and especially in the playoffs. So hopefully you're just getting a good season from him. Does he walk? Does he come back? That will be a conversation for the end of the year, but we'll see what happens there. Phil Maton, again, a good strikeout guy, essentially replacing Brad Keller to an extent. He signs a 2-year deal, so a multi-year deal for a reliever, the first time we've ever seen that in a while. He signs a $14.5 million deal, so the AAV is $7.25 million, and Maton had a good year. I know he was on the market for like the longest of time after being on the OMG Mets playoff run. I think he was the only free agent pickup by the St. Louis Cardinals, and then he got traded to Texas, who had that dominant bullpen, and we'll get to that a little bit later. So we pick up that, a lot of strikeouts. That's basically what the Cubs needed. You're losing Keller, so you need to replace that somehow, and Maton does that. So I like Maton, and I think it was a good fit for the bullpen. And then we go to Hunter Harvey, who went from Kansas City. So he's basically a setup guy, 1-year deal, $6 million. He's had injury problems, but when he's healthy, he is very effective. He has great velocity, and just, again, if he's the setup guy to Daniel Palencia, which by the looks of it is going to happen, I like this move a lot. He's very electric, but again, the only issue with Harvey is can he stay healthy? Because initially I think he was going to get traded to Texas, but it didn't happen because he just wasn't healthy at all last year. Caleb Thielbar, who was on the Cubs last season, he re-signs for a 1-year deal worth $4.5 million. So a lefty reliever, so he comes back to the Cubs, and it was like whether they were going to bring back him or Pomeranz. Thielbar was better down the stretch and overall, so he cost a little bit more, but again, you just want results, and Thielbar does that. So nice to see him come back to the Cubs. Again, the only thing that concerns about me with him is age. Will he be able to replicate his season from last year? Because I believe he's like 39 now or something like that, close to it. So yeah, Thielbar coming back. Just let's hope for the best with that one. Hobie Milner, also coming from Texas. 1-year deal worth $3.75 million. He was with Milwaukee, so Craig Counsell knows him a lot. He does not have great velocity, but he is a ground ball specialist, which helps the middle defense of our team tremendously. And you can even say the corners, because Mike Bush does play good defense at first. And Alex Bregman, again, won a Gold Glove with the Astros in 2024. So, again, just a ground ball specialist there. And I like the fit a lot, Hobie Milner. And Craig Counsell knows him, like I said, from Milwaukee. So, good fit there. Speaking of Milwaukee, he's hurt this season, but he'll be back next season. Shelby Miller, who came while he was on the Diamondbacks, got traded to the Milwaukee Brewers at the deadline. He had Tommy John, but he signed a 2-year deal worth $2.5 million, so an AAV of $1.25 million. So he could come back this season from with the rumors of it, but he's especially there for next season. So basically you lock him up because Miller, again, he fits the trajectory of what Jed Hoyer wants his bullpen to look like. So while he's recovering from his surgery, it's better to just lock him up early. So you do that, and then you get Jacob Webb, who also came from Texas. So you're seeing a bit of a pattern here. 3 Texas relievers going to the Cubs. That's how good their bullpen was. He signs a 1-year deal worth $1.5 million. Again, strikeouts are there. I think he does have great ground ball rates as well, which, again, I said it with Milner, helps our middle infield defense. So, again, I like that a lot, especially for the cheap. And then finally, even though he's hurt, and who knows if he'll play, I don't know what's going to happen with him, but Tyler Austin, who came from Japan, he was in the MLB like a few years back, goes to Japan and then has a good year. He's a first baseman, but he can also play outfield. $1.25 million is his AAV, and he would be like the backup first baseman to Mike Bush. He's a righty. He mashes lefties, even though Bush will not be a platoon guy anymore, and I'm happy about that. He gets to start against everybody, but even for Ballesteros, he could be a platoon guy at a DH position. So when he comes back, and who knows when that'll be, it's a great fit for the Chicago Cubs there. So those are the guys we brought in, and I went over the guys that came out from the Chicago Cubs this past offseason. So there you go. And then those are the moves this offseason. We're going to go to, spring training stuff. And, again, just not anything special. Conforto and Dylan Carlson were guys that the Cubs brought in on minor league deals. They both signed with the Cubs. But I just think the pitching especially was just not good. The Cubs didn't have a great record in spring training. Not that the games count. But last year we had a great spring training. We won a lot more games. Again, they don't count, but I'm just speaking from what I saw from last year to this year. Just the pitching was not good, especially in the starting rotation. Matt Boyd, Jameson Tyone, not good at all. But again, that's why you get the games to start up. But I don't think the spring training was all too that bad. You pretty much understood what you were getting with the Cubs here. They finished with like a losing record in spring training, but again, it's about like seeing which guys can make the lineup. But I don't think it played too much of a factor with the Cubs because basically you knew who was going to get to the big leagues and who didn't. Ballesteros, the top prospect, did get in, so that's nice to see. And then you saw like a couple other guys, who was it? You saw Tyler Austin get on there. You saw Dylan Carlson. You saw Michael Conforto. Colin Ray, I forgot to mention him. He re-signed with the Cubs. But, yeah, I don't think this offseason was all too that bad. Spring training, the record wasn't there, but you saw some growth and more consistency. So, not too much from spring training there. Now we'll get to the World Baseball Classic because I personally enjoyed watching it this year. We're going to go through the top 5 moments of the World Baseball Classic from Chicago Cubs players. We're going to start at number 5 in the USA-Canada quarterfinal game with Alex Bregman sparking a rally because even though it was quiet for him and he was selected to the United States team, he had a hand in the Team USA's 5-3 win over Canada. They held a 1-0 lead in the third. Bregman delivered an infield single with the bases loaded, which led to 2 runs. And then PCA also later came through with an RBI single in that 6th inning. They won again 5-3, which advanced them all the way to the finals, where they lost to Venezuela, but we're also going to get to that momentarily. Javier Assad, who was injured for a good chunk of the year last year, came back in August, was selected to the Mexico team, and he had a breakout showing with them in the 2023 tournament, and he returned in this year's World Baseball Classic with Mexico. He only made 2 starts, but his best performance came in the pool play against Great Britain on March 6th. He worked 3 2/3 innings pitched. They were scoreless, striking out 2 and allowing only 2 hits to put Mexico on a path to an 8-2 victory over Great Britain. So Javier Assad with a great game, and that was number 4. Heading to number 3, Seiya Suzuki. He did get injured, and that's why you saw some outfielders get selected to the Major League roster through spring training, like Dylan Carlson and Michael Conforto. Expect one of those guys to probably be DFA'd or sent down to the minor leagues when Suzuki is back, and I know he had a rehab stint with Knoxville starting soon, if it didn't already. But he played with Japan this time. He didn't in 2023. He enjoyed a strong tournament, though, nonetheless, after getting hurt in the quarterfinal game to Venezuela. He had a 2-home run game and an 8-6 win over Korea on March 7th in the pool play. He had a 2-run home run in the first inning and added a solo shot in the third, and later drew a bases-loaded walk in that win. So Seiya Suzuki, that moment, great for his team in Japan in pool play. So Suzuki, I would say overall, great tournament from him. Number 2, we're going to go to Pete Crow Armstrong in the game against Italy in pool play. That's the game the United States lost to Team Italy. The score was 8-6, but PCA was selected to the team, which was great for him. And he tried to make a comeback. They were down 8-1 in the 7th inning. He launched a 3-run homer to right. And then when they were down 8-5, he went for a solo shot again. So he had a 2-home run game in the loss. But yeah, responsible for 4 of the 6 runs. So great game there from Pete Crow Armstrong. And number 1, I think everybody that knows the Cubs knew what number 1 is going to be. And that was the historic save for Daniel Palencia for Team Venezuela to win the championship. He needed 11 pitches to cruise through Kyle Schwarber, Gunnar Henderson, and Roman Anthony in the 9th inning of that game, which was ironic because the Cubs were not going to let Daniel Palencia pitch unless it was in a save situation. That was the same thing that happened with Mason Miller and the Padres with Team USA, but Eugenio Suarez had an RBI to give Venezuela the lead in the 9th inning after Bryce Harper tied it up in the 8th for Team USA. So you got to see Daniel Palencia, get the save and give Venezuela their first World Baseball Classic win ever. So it was great. 100-mile-hour heater in the corner to strike out Roman Anthony, and he had 9 strikeouts and no runs or hits allowed in 5 innings overall in the World Baseball Classic. He got saves in the quarterfinal game against Japan, the semifinal game against Italy, and obviously the championship. Across the 3 appearances, Palencia faced the minimum and struck out 6 of the 9 batters he faced. So this really cemented Palencia, in my opinion, as a top, I'm going to say it, I think he's a top 10 closer in baseball after this performance. I know there were a bit of questions regarding him last season, whether he would be the one to be able to make the saves consistently. I think this made the answer very clear if anyone had any questions regarding that for Daniel Palencia. I was really, really happy for Daniel Palencia, and it's great to see him on the Cubs and being able to do this in a Cub uniform for this upcoming season. Last but not least, we're going to go to some very quick extensions regarding Pete Crow Armstrong and Nico Horner. PCA avoids all of his arbitration years. A couple of free agency years I think are canceled out, I believe. I forgot what the exact details were, but I do know that it's a 6-year deal worth $115 million. So getting him under $20 million, in my opinion, is an absolute steal, because I know when we were talking about extensions last season, because he rejected a $75 million deal for 5 years. Now he signs $115 over 6. We were talking about him potentially signing a deal like Fernando Tatis. So getting him under that $20 million mark, which is something similar to, I believe, Jackson Merrill, I think. I don't know what the math and the numbers look like there, but regardless, great extension there for Pete Crow Armstrong. Again, keeping him around for as long as he is. And then speaking of keeping him around, Nico Horner also signing a 6-year deal worth $141 million. There are some deferrals in that extension as well. But regardless, Nico Horner was an impending free agent this upcoming season. So bringing him back on a long-term deal over $20-something million, great deal for him. And he probably took a pay cut considering what he probably could have made on the open market, because he was a Gold Glove finalist at shortstop, I believe, in 2022 before moving over to second when Dansby Swanson arrived, where he won 2 Gold Gloves in 2023 and 2025. Again, just what he does, his speed, his contact hitting ability, because he's not a home run hitter. He does the little things the best, and he provides the Gold Glove defense that he does. So amazing deal to bring back Nico Hoerner, who is one of my 3 favorite players on the Cubs. Him, PCA, and Seiya Suzuki, but Nico Hoerner especially, just for what he does and the attitude he brings. Just, I love that of Nico Hoerner, and I'm happy that he's a Cub for another 6 seasons. So that's all that I have in this episode. I will have series recaps for the Angels and the Guardians coming out tomorrow, so be on the lookout for all of that. Give me your thoughts on all the news regarding the Offseason World Baseball Classic, spring training, and the extensions that were, announced over the last week in the comment section down below. If you're interested in the content, feel free to like and subscribe, and also follow us on Twitter at Cubs360X. So this is Jack from Cubs360, and as always, go Cubs go.